Welcome back to the Adrenal Fatigue podcast. It's Danielle and Angela here.
Hey everyone.
And today we are talking about a very common symptom of adrenal fatigue and hormonal imbalance, one that is often very frustrating, and that is sleep.
Such a big topic.
Yes. And there's a lot of different areas we could go down with this topic of sleep. But today we want to talk particularly about why you could be waking up at 2 or 3 a.m. consistently and maybe not being able to go back to sleep. You know, it's frustrating because what you need right now in order to recover, right, is good quality sleep. So it can be very frustrating. We do want to start out by saying that waking up several times in the middle of the night is fairly normal. So I want to there's a misconception there for many people. And I think it's important that we just bring awareness to it. But we can also talk about why you might be waking up and what you can do about it.
Yeah, I really think this is going to be an important and powerful conversation. Like you said, Angela, I think there's a couple things happening here that make it all the more frustrating. One, like you mentioned, we know how important a good quality night's sleep is when you are trying to fix your hormones. So there's always that at the back of our mind, if we're not sleeping well, that it's hindering our healing. So there's that level of frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side of things, there's a misconception too, and I've seen this time and time again, where we think our sleep issues are just the way that we are. Like we've struggled with them for so long that this is actually our normal and this is the best that it's going to get. And so we overcompensate in other areas of our life. We see it so frequently with things like exercise or supplements. Those are some of the big ones people turn to, trying to overcompensate for their health in other ways to make up for the lack of sleep. But I think that this is an important conversation to have, to just look at some of the reasons you might not be sleeping well. And it might start to put some things together that help you understand why maybe you've struggled with this for such a long time.
Yes, I am very excited to have this conversation. I think it will give people and our listeners some very nice awarenesses, aha moments. So
Yeah.
Let's dive into the reasons why you could be waking up at 2 or 3 a.m. So the first one, Danielle, I want to talk about is, you've already touched on it, but the hormonal piece of this.
Right. And so this might feel like the obvious, right? So when there's hormone imbalances at play, our sleep can be disrupted. So some of the most common, I guess, hormone imbalances that could be happening are in regards to what's going on with your circadian rhythm, right? So if your melatonin is too low in the evening or too low throughout the course of the night, this could lead to you having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. And of course, you probably know this already if you've been struggling with burnout and adrenal issues for a while now. You know that when stress hormones are involved and you're stressed, those stress hormones are higher at night when they should be lower, and it just leads to more sleep issues. And then we throw into the mix issues with sex hormones as well. Sex hormones, thyroid hormones, and it just wreaks more havoc on our sleep patterns. So this is something that we could go really deep, like almost deserving of its own call. But it's one of those things that you can actually get a lot of clarity on if you're working with a practitioner. If we're suspective that hormones are one of the reasons that you're not sleeping well, we can do a test. We can see what's going on with your hormones and when, depending on the type of test your practitioner runs. But this can give us a lot of insights, and then you can take action, whether it's from herbs, whether it's from lifestyle, whether it's from diet, all of the above. We can take action to push down certain hormones that might be too high that are keeping you up at night, or vice versa. So this can be really powerful. So just checking in on what's going on with your cortisol curve, what's going on with your sex hormones, what's going on with the hormonal picture in general is just really important, especially if you've struggled with sleep issues for a while.
Great. Okay. So getting clarity on that cortisol curve. And I think just for those who are very new to this, right, is that the cortisol is the hormone that wakes you up in the morning and makes you feel alert and alive. And it tenders off throughout the day, right? And that's when melatonin becomes the highest. And in order for you to fall asleep, and have a good night's sleep is that hormone melatonin. It's so important. And the production of melatonin is highest at a certain time of night. And so if you miss that window, right, we like to say between 9 and 11 p.m., and maybe even a little bit, it's obviously give or take, then you're going to have trouble falling asleep. A lot of you know this by just that idea of the second wind, right? If you wait too long, then you get amped up again. And then it's really hard to fall asleep. And then you probably have more interrupted sleep.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that.
So yeah, getting clarity in your cortisol curve is so key. So that's one way. We like to say, don't guess, test. Okay, so another reason you might be waking up at 2 or 3 a.m. consistently is chemicals that disrupt sleep. Things like caffeine, nicotine, or alcohol. Yeah. So Danielle, being our holistic nutritionist here in our team, you can talk a little bit about this. We'd love to hear any suggestions you have, some good alternatives maybe. Love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, this can be a big one. And I think a realization, and maybe this is something I'm guilty of, so it feels bigger to me, but I've worked with a lot of people who can relate to this. And maybe you guys out there too feel this way or notice this pattern in yourself. But when I was struggling with stage 3 burnout, one of my bad habits was because I wasn't sleeping well. Sleep was a big issue for me. I was really tired, of course. So what did I do? I drank tons and tons of coffee to get me through the day. So all day I'm stimulating. And on top of that, I was curious about adrenal fatigue. So I was throwing in like stimulating herbs to the mix as well. This was way back in the day when I really didn't know what I was doing. But I would stimulate all day, and then I'm trying to go to sleep at night and I'm feeling really wired. So what do I start doing? I start trying to like take things to calm me down at night. But it's kind of hard when you're telling the body to be like stimulate, go, go, go all day long. And then suddenly when you're ready to like finally call it a day, you're suddenly just throwing something else into the mix to help you calm down. So you can see how this imbalance can make it difficult to sleep if you've just been drinking coffee or caffeine too late into the day. So that can be a big one for a lot of people. If you notice, especially if you're having like more than 1 cup a day, if you're drinking 2 to 3 cups throughout the morning into the early or late afternoon, this can really hinder your ability to fall asleep and wind down later because it's going to stay in your system, right? So my recommendation there, and of course it's going to depend on your stage of adrenal fatigue. So if you're feeling really burnt out, you might be totally reliant on the coffee right now and can't imagine cutting it out. In some cases, we would recommend just removing it completely, get a gauge of your true energy, and use alternatives in the mix. And we can chat about some of those. But we would say just cut it out for 30 days and kind of do a little reset. And you might notice that you sleep a lot better during that stage when you're cutting it out. But you're probably going to be tired and going through some withdrawal as well. So that's where you can use things like matcha or tinder off slowly. I actually have a whole tindering off coffee and tons of really latte-like coffee vibe recipes in the Eat for Energy recipe book, which we'll link in the show notes. So if you need support on how to do it, I think because there's a lot to talk about today, I won't go into too much detail, but just being mindful of how you're stimulating throughout the day is really important. And then just knowing, I know there's people out there too who might use like alcohol as something to help them calm down at night, thinking that it's actually going to help you get a better sleep. But what you might find is that you're actually not getting as good of a quality sleep when you use alcohol, especially in bigger quantities. Like if you've ever gone out and drank too much with your friends, you know that the quality of sleep that you're getting after that type of night isn't really as restorative as you would hope, as you would think, I guess.
Right. We've all had that experience.
Yeah. So it's not the best quality sleep. So when you're doing that night after night after night, you just have to understand that it's impacting the restoration and all the rejuvenation that would be happening if you're having like a more pure quality night's sleep.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for breaking that down. And lots of great recipes inside that book. There's a really amazing mushroom chocolate latte that is just dreamy, and I drink most mornings. I don't want everyone to admit that, but
it's one
it's
of my
lovely.
favorites too. I'm so glad you like it.
Yeah, so check it out for sure. So yeah, I feel like we could have a conversation, a whole podcast just about that topic in general. There's so much to talk about there. But
Probably
thank you.
each of these topics when I
Exactly.
think about it.
Exactly. Yeah. So limiting caffeine, having caffeine replacements, and all those things are inside the recipe book, and some of them are on our blog too. So check that out. So the next one, number 3, why you might be waking up at 2 or 3, might just be a transition. You're going from one sleep cycle or phases of your sleep to the next. And it's for many of you, you might get up just for that alone just might be what's happening. But what's more frustrating is that you can't go back to sleep easily. And I think that's an issue that I think we need to bring to the table, because it's an important one. We're not talking about insomnia today, and that's a whole nother big topic. But like we talk with our naturopaths, it's not uncommon to wake up in the middle of the night. That's not the issue necessarily. But it's the fact that do we have good stress management techniques? Do we have coping? Do we have support to be able to help if we have traumas, or maybe we have trauma around sleep? Maybe we have a lot of stress in our life that we're not taking care of, and it's coming. A lot of that stress, we know, comes in at night, doesn't it?
100%. It's when you finally have time to sit with your thoughts, right?
Yes. So we have people who are, having trouble falling asleep for that reason too, right? We process the day's events right before sleep as well. And sometimes we do the same thing when we wake up in the middle of the night. So maybe there is some room there for learning how to, maybe there's a coach or some talk therapy that could happen in order to support you, because those things are real, right? Waking up in the middle of the night and having those certain thoughts that are dark and intense, right? Just kind of being real here. And it's important that we understand that that is just the process, and what are we going to do about it, right? How are we going to get support in that area of our lives?
Yeah, I think it's also a red flag too if it's happening. I mean, it happens to the best of us, and depending on what's going in your life, you might be experiencing this more frequently. In the adrenal fatigue community, this is something that we hear all the time. People wake up at different times of the morning with racing thoughts or feelings of dread, or hearts are pounding.
Yes.
And so if you're experiencing this, I mean, like we said, it could be something hormonal going on. And in certain cases, just as an example, we've seen on tests where somebody was waking up every day at like 3:30, 4 a.m. in the morning, feeling that dread. And we could see what was happening hormonally at that point, and her cortisol was just like totally crashing to like a level that was way too low. So it's almost like it's sending the body into an SOS panic mode. And this is a hormonal response that's going on. But then you're thinking of all this stressful stuff, and you're having this physical and mental anxiety, but it's hormonally influenced. But also there could be stuff that's going on in your life that you're thinking about that needs to be processed. And that's why it's coming up in the silence of the night. So it's, again, maybe messages for you to, or maybe egging you on to maybe work through the stuff. Like you said, is it talk therapy? Is it journaling stuff out more? But just kind of looking at what you need to process, and knowing that you're deserving of a good sleep, and you don't need to figure out all the world's problems right now.
Right.
Good You'll point. Do a better job doing it in the morning with a better sleep.
Yes.
Easier said than done, but.
Absolutely. And if you'd like some support in this area, I do have a meditation album where I have meditations particularly on how to prepare mindfully for sleep. So how to create a routine in your life where you're letting go of some of the intensity before bed so you don't have to fall asleep with it, which will make sleeping a lot more peaceful. And also some yoga nidras to help you fall asleep. And just also meditations about how to process those intense emotions or judgments you have of yourself. All those kind of, like you mentioned, anxiety producing types of thoughts that are not going to support your recovery. And a lot of us have these cycles and these patterns, right, of thought and beliefs that have been going on for decades. And if you're ready to sort of start to get to the bottom of them and start to just have some very simple tools you can start using to move through this, I highly recommend my meditation album, or meditation in general, or just some sort of support to guide you, support you in a gentle way to working on these kinds of things.
Yeah, you can see that literally we could have a podcast about each of these topics. The good
So
news is that
big.
we do have resources, pretty good resources for almost every point that we've highlighted so far. Hormone testing, recipe books, meditation albums. There's so much that you can be doing to support and address all of this stuff. And your meditation album is just so helpful. And I think that if that's something people haven't tried, guided meditations, releasing some of that stuff at night, this can be so transformative. So I really encourage anybody out there listening, struggling with these racing thoughts or, you know, stress and nighttime stress, give this a try.
Mm-hmm.
And do it, you know, set a little challenge that you're going to do it every night for 10 days and let us know how it goes.
Yes.
But we were talking about sleep cycles, and then mindset kind of came into the conversation. One thing I just wanted to say about that is it is normal, right? Like sometimes you might wake up in a deeper state of sleep. Something will stir you from your sleep, and it can be a lot easier to fall right back asleep when you're already in that stage of sleep. Mm-hmm. But sometimes when you're in a lighter stage of sleep and you're woken up, it might not be, that's when the thoughts and stuff come in, and it might not be as easy to fall back asleep. So depending on what state you were roused from, that could be an influencing factor too. And then the way that you think about it. So I actually had this conversation with a client this week, and we were chatting about, like, how did you sleep? And she was like, well, pretty good, but like I'm woken up all the time by my cat. And it reminded me, when I was younger, I was woken up by my cat a couple times a night too, but I would never consider it a bad sleep or disrupted sleep because I could fall right back asleep after. I didn't think much of it. It was just kind of our routine. So you might experience this, might be waking up by the kids or your husband or your partner snoring. So there's so many things that could wake you up, but then we might, and I've seen this time and time again too, people will say, well, I don't get a good night's sleep because the kids wake me up, or the animals are waking me up, or the snoring is waking me up several times in the night. And so for one person, it's being like, it's not a big deal. I just fall back asleep, and they fall back asleep and consider it still a good sleep because they still know that they got 7 hours or however many hours, even though they woke up a bit. But then other people, just because it was disrupted a little bit, would consider it not a quality sleep because it's almost like putting too much pressure on it, right? Yeah, right. So it's perspective.
Yeah.
But 100%. I think that tails into this like stress, right? And the way that you're perceiving things, and then thoughts that I'm not getting sleeps that are conducive of healing. And then it just kind of is like a snake chasing its tail.
Yeah.
If you know what I'm getting at there.
Exactly. And I think it's important to bring that mindset piece in because we can all relate. And for those of you who know and follow us, I have a almost 1-year-old son. And so I'm still up in the night and he sleeps with us and doing the whole breastfeeding thing. And it's a lot of waking up and going back to sleep. And then all day long, I'm go, go, go between being mom and all the different hats that I wear. And if I feel sorry for myself or think about it too much, I can go right into that place of I'm so tired, yada, yada, yada. Or I can be like, I got this. I wake up. It's kind of a little bit crunchy to wake up sometimes, I'm not going to lie. And then once I'm out of bed, it's like, it felt like I got 7, 8 hours of sleep. So that's because it's all about, I play a lot with how to shift my mindset in order to make this work for me. Because the truth is I have to be up all day and I have to wear all these hats. And if I want to do that, I want to do that in a way that feels good and I want to be happy about it. So the mindset piece is so important. And thank you for bringing that up. Okay.
Yeah. And again, it's another big topic, but I love it. It's such an important one.
there's two ways to look at it, right?
Right.
Two ways to look at the same situation, or many or hundreds of ways to look at the same situation. Okay, so number 4 is medications. And this is, I would say, a pretty big one for our community, would you say?
Yeah.
Because people are taking so many different things, from antidepressants to beta blockers over the counter, like even if you just cold remedies, things like this. Um,
In some cases, people go and actually get like sleeping pills, and
mhm.
then they try to wean off the sleeping pills and can't sleep at all anymore. And I've seen that too. And it throws people into massive stressful cases of insomnia.
Yeah.
So it can be so stressful if you're trying to tinder off something, if you're on something. But just knowing that taking different medications can have different side effects. So just do your due diligence and your research, see what those side effects are, see what it's going to be like coming off of those. And yeah, it can be something that can really contribute and interfere with your sleep. So definitely not something we want to overlook.
Great. Okay. So there you go. Talk to your doctor if you are taking something. If something's not working for you and really affecting your sleep, maybe there are different alternatives to that same medication that might work better for you. So, we just encourage you to ask questions and don't take it lightly. Your sleep is very important, right? So
it is worthwhile in some cases if you've been on certain medications for a really long time, working with an integrative doctor, looking at the hormonal piece, but also just from a perspective of functional nutrition. Like, is there something that you haven't been dealing with, maybe that you've been masking with medication for a while, that maybe you could start tindering down the dose, especially if it's something interfering with your sleep? Is there something that you could start correcting at a root level? I'm thinking a lot of these gut issues is kind of where my head's at right now.
I like it.
But just having that conversation can be really worthwhile if you're feeling like you're on something and that you don't want to be on it long term. Okay, let's look a little deeper and see how you can come off that, work with your doctor and have that conversation and get the ball rolling. And maybe it'll help with your sleep.
Awesome. Okay, so number 5 is, some people out there might be suffering from sleep apnea. So this is something that you need to work with a doctor on. And this is obviously going to interrupt your sleep. This is when you, if you're not familiar, when you can actually stop breathing during sleep, which will most likely cause you to wake up. And it is I would say, pretty common in adrenal fatigue. And there's also some really awesome new, I'd say, like a new trend or a new book about breathing and the connection of mouth breathing versus nostril breathing, and the importance of breathing correctly. And we could go talk about that for a whole podcast as well, which I think we should soon. But
Yeah.
If you have issues with breathing in general, being able to breathe through your nose, this is something I would definitely look into with your doctor.
Yeah. I think it's a lot more common than a lot of people don't even realize that they have it, and how many times they're being woken up in the night because they actually stop breathing. And so the quality of sleep that you get, and the more restorative hours of sleep that you can get out of dealing with your sleep apnea, is really incredible. I think there can be a couple physical links. Like, I know if you're overweight, I mean, weight can be a contributing factor to sleep apnea, but not always. So there's some people who have underlying conditions, those people with Lyme disease or some autoimmune stuff going on. I mean, I think anyone can have sleep apnea, but sometimes there's some physical stuff going on behind the scene too that might be contributing to it. So it might be something that you can actually prevent as you lose weight, as you work on those physical things. But just knowing that it's a lot more common. And yeah.
Yeah, I want to bring up a little personal story. Is, for me, I don't necessarily have sleep apnea. I've actually never been tested, but I do have a very small passage in my nose. I have a deviated septum, and I think this will be helpful to have this conversation. So I want to bring this part in, is that I have issues with breathing through my nose sometimes, especially if I have a cold or it's like allergy season. I'm more prone to allergies. And one thing I really want to bring in here is different allergies, food allergies. So for me particularly, it was gluten. And I became aware that I was sensitive to gluten during my adrenal fatigue recovery journey. And it's things like this, like gluten and dairy, that both create this inflammation in my body that also affect my nasal passages. And so for many years, I would say I was a mouth breather. And so I do experience the symptoms of what people would probably sleep apnea, even though I haven't gone to get diagnosed, but I have, personal connection with this. And so I just want to say to you, if this is coming up for you, to way you could start, addressing it, is this something that you could be taking out of your diet to support, less inflammation and not having all that, um, the sinus stuff going on, right? Extra fluid. So what would be supportive for you? What are some next steps you could take? I'm curious what your ideas, your thoughts here on this topic would be, Danielle.
Yeah, I think that's really an important one to bring into the picture, because depending on your food sensitivity or sensitive, it could be environmental as well, right? If you're having some like
Yes.
nasal congestion, you're going to be breathing through your mouth. There's two problems, I guess, with that. Then you're like mouth breathing all the time. Um, but then also you have that kind of chronic inflammation in your sinuses. And so food sensitivities in general is a big topic. So for you, removing the gluten allows you to breathe better, probably helps you sleep better at night, and has, of course, residual beneficial effects. For me, eating gluten didn't really feel like it inflamed me in any way digestively or physically. But when I cut it out, I literally went from not sleeping. I went from like having really awful sleeps to within 3 days sleeping like full 8 hours through the night, not waking up, falling asleep with ease. Like my sleep issues went away so quickly, cutting out a simple sensitivity. And I never would have suspected it was gluten based on how it made me feel when I ate it. So exploring that world, I think, can be so powerful, not only for your sleep, but getting rid of that inflammation, helping you breathe better, like in so many different capacities, right?
Yes.
So cool.
Thank you for bringing that up. And I think one place to start too, if this resonates, is even just something as simple as breathe right strips, just to help improve the passageway and open the passageways up in your nasal passages to be able to breathe more comfortably through your nose. I really just want to touch on this because I've been having a lot of fun researching in this area lately, is this book that came out this year called Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art by James Nestor. And it is talking about how we mouth breathe very often. Most, I think 20 to 50% of people, kind of a wide range, but are mouth breathers. And they did studies based on, actually, he was part of a study where he went from breathing through his nose like he normally does to breathing through his mouth, and how many conditions he started to develop in his body over just a short amount of time from breathing through his mouth. So I just want to make that connection. I feel like it's a very important one. And I'll just leave you with that. So
Yeah, I
let's
totally
move
think
on.
that's going to be one of the trends of 2021, is like breathing
Absolutely,
is
which
going
is
to
an
be
awesome
big.
trend to be
Yeah.
going on towards. Yes, I
I
love it.
mean, my boyfriend's super into it now. He's been taping up his mouth at night. So he's like, "Are we done talking? I'm taping my mouth."
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny, but I think it's interesting awareness to have, and I'm really excited for people to explore this more and to delve into a little bit more of the research myself. So we chatted about number 6 a little bit earlier when we were talking about just, the stress that we're under in any given day. And so there's a lot of different ways that the different stressors that you're enduring could be waking you up in the night or hindering your sleep. But like we mentioned earlier, there's some things that you can do to help if you're feeling really tense. Like, don't take it to bed with you, right? So we just wanted to share a couple tips with you on how you can let some of this stuff go, things you can do to help support your body and relax in the evening, so that you're going to bed feeling a little bit more at ease and a little more blissed out, and not just going from like looking at your computer, looking at your finances right into bed and taking everything to bed with you. This can really help just put your mind at ease and support a better night's sleep. So, really simple things, maybe things that you've probably heard too many times in the past, like take a hot shower, take a hot bath, add Epsom salts. But I promise, like if you do those things, especially if you've been working and doing, have your mind on all this stuff in the evening, this is a really nice way to just calm down your muscles, unwind, and just kind of get into a new zone, like wash away the day before bed. And I think it can just be so nice. You can add some really nice essential oils in there. You can pick your favorites, but like a little bit of lavender is always so nice just for helping to promote relaxation. It's really nice for just promoting a good night's sleep. We see those lavender like pillow sprays. It's relaxing and we all know it. So let's just embrace it. But then, like, even magnesium oil, if you have some magnesium oil, rub it into your skin, even just self massage with it could be olive oil. But the act of self massage and just kind of giving yourself some TLC at the end of the day, we don't need to spend too much time chatting about these different things. Journaling out your frustrations, journaling your wins for the day, kind of just doing a little daily reflection, but just dumping everything out so that you're not going to hit the pillow thinking about everything that you need to do tomorrow. You've got your list, you made it, you'll look at it tomorrow morning, but for now, your mind can be at ease. So I'm curious what you guys like to do as part of your nighttime routines. Feel free to let us know in the comments on our Facebook page. What's your favorite part of your nighttime ritual to help you wind down and feel more blissful before bed?
Thank you. That was lovely. And I think it's really nice too. Some people like to plan your day ahead the night before. And why I'm mentioning that one is because I feel like it's a really great time to, if you're someone who tends to think about all the things you have to do, if you take even 5 minutes just to think about, okay, what are the most important things I need to do tomorrow, and give yourself a little bulleted list of things and realize that actually it's maybe not as big as you made it out to be in your head, that you can fall asleep easier and maybe stay asleep. So that's a really, really nice exercise to play with. So we encourage you to make the last hour before you go to sleep really honoring of you and taking care of yourself on a deep level so that you can fall asleep more easily, because obviously sleep is such an important part. So for me, it's making sleep a priority. And that's what we would like you to start doing. And you might have a really yucky relationship with sleep right now, so I know that might be very frustrating to hear. But so we're sorry if that's where you're at right now, and we hope that some of these suggestions and areas that we're talking about and are highlighting today will support you in that. Okay, should we dive into number 7?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, number 7 is not something that's talked about as much, and this is aging. When you age, your sleep cycles change. You spend less time in deep sleep, and so you might become a little bit lighter of a sleeper in that way because you're less in deep sleep. So then things like noise or light might wake you up more easily than it would in the past.
Yeah, this is really
So
common. And I think it's a lot of the times where you'll see there's so many seniors out there who then go to things like sleeping pills because they're not sleeping as well as they were before. So there's a lot of different things that can contribute to this, of course. But we can give you a couple quick tips on things that you can do to help prevent you from waking up if you are going to wake up more easily.
yeah, and I think these will help people who, even if you're not in that stage in your life either, is to really just be aware of like what is waking you up, right? So is it noise? Is it sound? Is it the temperature of the room, right? Okay, so let's give you some maybe or some very holistic things that you could be doing. Do you need white noise to block out? Do you live in a noisy area? Do you live near a busy street? Is it the train nearby that's waking you up? So what is that? And white noise or earplugs are another great option. My husband sleeps with earplugs. And it's very helpful for some people. It also helps with hearing your own breath, and sometimes that's very helpful for people. It's very meditative. A sleep mask is a very simple one to block out the light. And making sure that you have, a very nice space to sleep. Do you have a nice mattress? Do you have a pillow that you like? Do you keep your room like a sanctuary? A lot of people, we have a lot of clutter in our rooms, and that alone energetically isn't really compatible with sleep. So being aware of that and maybe clearing some things out. Maybe that's something you want to focus on this year, is moving things from out of your room and making it more of a simple space and taking those things out to the garage or the storage.
I think that is really profound. And I think that people don't always give this enough credit, but so true. I think that, and they do say that physical clutter is a reflection of our mental clutter and vice versa. And so
Yes.
I know I hate sleeping in a messy, unorganized room. Like, if the first thing that my eyes settle on when I wake up in the morning or like as I'm going to bed is just like laundry all over all over the chair. And I mean, it happens sometimes, but if things get too chaotic and there's just too much stuff, I think that it just interferes with the flow and the feng shui of our room. And I think that this has a really deep impact on the quality of sleep that we can get. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but when I was living in Korea, I was really struggling with my sleep at the beginning. And we lived in this just like small studio, and we actually like moved the bed from one area of the room to the other, and the flow of energy in our room just changed, and all of a sudden I just could sleep so much better once we moved the bed. So call me crazy, but I think that the flow of a room is really important, and I know it really affects me, especially when there's too much clutter, and even trying to work in clutter.
Yeah.
It can really just take a toll. So if your room is really cluttered right now, what can you clean up? How can you make it a little bit more organized? How can you make it feel like a sanctuary?
Awesome. So aging, but we went on a little side tangent, and I think it was an important one. So awesome. All right. Number eight, let's talk about exercise and movement. And for me, I encourage people to exercise during the mornings, in the mornings. I think it goes well with our natural circadian rhythm, right? Our cortisol curve, if you will. And for most of us, exercise is very stimulating. And if you're doing something like stimulating, even a couple hours before bed, it could affect your sleep, right, Danielle?
Yeah, I mean, I used to do those boot camps. I'm more like pretty intense boot camp in the evening. It started at 8, which made sense when you get home from work. By the time you like have a quick dinner and then like get there, it was 8 or 7. I think it started at 7. So by the time you get home, it's like after 8. And the thought of winding down anytime soon was just not happening because I was so revved up from the workout. So I know from that personal example that evening workouts that are too exciting just can interfere with your sleep. And as much as movement can be a good thing, I think if you're not getting a good sleep, this was also part of my hormonal demise all those years ago, was exercising a lot and then not really fully recovering from my exercise because I couldn't get the quality sleep that I needed because I couldn't fall asleep early enough. And then I would have to get up for work in the morning and so on and so forth. So you're not getting that rejuvenating sleep and you're not really repairing from the stress of the day before, which becomes a vicious cycle and a double-edged sword when it comes to hormonal depletion, right? So that
Yes.
being said, there can be the type of yoga, like restorative yoga and more chilled out exercises that you can do like almost in your pajamas, like in your cozy clothes, light a salt lamp, get your mat out, do some nice stretches before bed just to release some of the day in a really gentle way that I think can be really nice in the evening. So I think it's picking the right workout for the right time of day too, and for what you're having capacity for with your hormonal
Exactly.
stage right now.
Thank you for bringing that up. So this topic is not just exercise and movement. So yes, bringing in the lighter movement toward the end of the day. And again, this has to do with that 2 or 3 a.m. wake up because, right, we could be affecting the way that the level of sleep that we're getting, right? If we're affecting that the way that we fall asleep and we're not going to sleep till later, then we're also most likely prohibiting the more wake ups and less deep sleep throughout the night.
Yeah. And you can even imagine, if we imagine that cortisol curve, right? Your cortisol is naturally supposed to be coming down in the evening, but then you do this big workout and you get like all revved up, and that cortisol is actually going to be pushed up. So exercise can be a really good way to push your cortisol when it's dropping in a mindful way. If you have low cortisol, you can use it to help retrain your curve. But in this case, you could see how you're just pushing things up too high in the evening where it might already be too elevated. And so then it just exacerbates on itself.
And you bring up a good point there. So yeah, so if you're someone who gets sort of a midday slump or around 11 a.m. or 2 p.m., you get this kind of really low energy, you kind of feel like you just hit the ground, you've been run over by a truck. I mean, this is a great time. I know it's the last thing you want to do, but even just getting out and walking could be a really great thing. Just a 10-15 minute walk, even 5 minute walk for people that are in more stage 3 adrenal fatigue.
Yeah, even just a couple yoga flows. I mean, just doing, and you can look them up on YouTube, but just even like a little series of stretches just to create some movement can often be enough. So I love the idea of a simple walk, that you don't even have to leave your house, because yeah, I mean, it would be nice if you can get out into nature. Obviously, that's like what we would recommend, but there's so many different ways you can do it. Again, I feel like these are all topics for a call. We could just go into so much detail.
Yes, absolutely. So are you bringing movement into your day enough though too for your body to be able to sleep for long periods of time, right? So our body needs to work out, or we need to move, we need to expend energy in a way. And sometimes, like I say, sleep begets sleep, or energy begets energy. Like sometimes we need to motivate ourselves and energize ourselves so that we can have even more energy.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling of when you are working out and you have been kind of following a workout regimen, that you might sleep really well, knowing that you worked hard during the day. It's like a sense of gratification, and your muscles are tired, and you might have a really good sleep knowing that you did some movement. So yeah, it all ties in.
Okay, cool. So I think we have some other really important topics. We're talking, next ones are about, I think some of the biggest ones too is like blood sugar and frequent urination. So stick with us. We have a few more to go through. I think those are really, really important ones. So I think we are on number 9. For many people, they're dealing with frequent urination or the urge to urinate. That's very common with adrenal fatigue. And so let's talk a little bit about this. And of course, if you have to pee, it's often going to wake you up in the middle of the night. So this has to do often with electrolyte imbalance. I'm going to pass it off to Danielle and have her talk a little bit about this imbalance that's happening, why you might have frequent urination, what's happening hormonally, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the most common. I want to say it's up there amongst the top most common reasons that people are being disturbed in the night,
Yes.
waking up to use the bathroom. There's a couple different reasons why this might be happening. In the adrenal fatigue community specifically, a lot of the times there is some electrolyte imbalance going on. And this can just be due to stress. Our body has higher demands for certain minerals, but at the same time, and I'm just going to keep it high level, just for time's sake, high level, and just kind of describe it in a nutshell. But like, we're using more minerals, and we're also often flushing more minerals. Really, we're not using them as effectively. And so because we're not really holding on to our minerals as well, and we're dumping them, we're like dumping fluids more quickly, we're often going to the bathroom a lot more frequently. This will be exaggerated if you've been drinking a lot of, it could be anything that's a diuretic. So if you're having a lot of caffeine, a lot of coffee, if you're just drinking tons of water too, if you're drinking tons of water in the way, and some of us have this habit where we know that we need to get like a certain amount of liters in a day. So we stand over the sink with our big like liter mason jar and just chug it. And you can imagine like what comes in your body then has to process, right? So it's not like it's being processed in nice, gentle sips kind of gradually throughout the day. It's like a liter at one time. So if you're drinking kind of like bigger quantities, chugging water like throughout big chunks of the day, you might find that you're waking up too in the night if you're doing this too close to bed. But sometimes it's the mineral side of things. So this is where working with integrative doctors, again, working on the adrenals in general, just working on the whole stress piece is going to help support the big mineral imbalance picture and stress picture that's kind of contributing to this.
Okay, great. Thank you for explaining that. And this is a big issue for me during my recovery. And so I know how frustrating it can be to have to pee every 15 minutes or feel like you have to pee every 15 minutes, but it definitely interrupts sleep as well. So figure out if this imbalance is an issue for you, and hopefully you'll eliminate that
Yeah,
as part of,
adding, oh,
go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, adding like something like the adrenal cocktails to
Mm,
your daily routine can be something that can help just restore and replenish some of those minerals. So we do have recipes for this on our blog, but you can just Google the adrenal cocktail. And it's just rich in potassium. There's some sodium in there too, often some vitamin C. And those are just adrenal and kidney nourishing minerals that can help you hold on and absorb your water a little bit better so that it's just not flowing right through you.
oh yes, I remember that was the big issue. I was told I was dehydrated and I was drinking all this water and it was just going right through me. So
Yeah.
anyway, if this is happening for you, um, we definitely have some support. We have support with our team. As you probably already know, the collective, we have naturopathic doctors as part of our team. You can get tested for all these different imbalances with us or anyone else. There's some great tests out there. Okay, so number 10, just a real quick, we're going to touch on this for just a moment, is napping during the day. If you're someone who likes to nap during the day, or someone that has to nap during the day, I should say, that's more common. It's just something to be aware of. For people that have had this, who do like to nap, we do encourage, if you can, shorter naps throughout the day so that you rest more easily at night. So just something to think about.
Yeah, that
Maybe
could
your
be
body
nice to as
doesn't,
well.
it needs to sleep a lot, but is it almost too much? And so thinking about shorter naps is a good thing. Okay, number 11 is other health conditions like GERD or arthritis or inflammation, things that are causing painful joints, things like restless leg syndrome, legs feeling jumpy. So I think these are pretty common too in our community, and let's talk a little bit about those. Those
Yeah.
are, a lot of those conditions, right, are conditions of inflammation, right?
Yeah, a lot of these are inflammation or depletion because, like, when I think of restless legs, sometimes there's mineral imbalances going on there. Neuropathy, I mean, this could be caused so many different, it's inflammation, but it could also be food sensitivities or environmental allergies or sensitivities as well. So many different things can come into play with these like underlying issues. Like you said, GERD is another one that could be waking people up in the night with heartburn. It's just uncomfortable, right? So if we're thinking about these from the perspective of inflammation, it's like, yeah, there's things that we can be doing to support on a whole bunch of different levels, right? Whether it's through herbal supplements, mineral supplementation, if we know that there's some sort of imbalance going on, obviously working with your doctors or an integrative professional to make sure that you're addressing from the right angle, but doing the best you can to get to the root of some of these things and not just, I mean, a lot of these things, there's so much that you can do for them, like
Yeah.
GERD, if you have inflammation and like joint pain, there's stuff that you can do to support day to day with whether it's with food, lifestyle, supplements, um, and it's I think just exploring what's waking you up if you haven't pinpointed it, and if you can pinpoint it, I just recommend working with somebody who can help you live more comfortably.
Yeah. Okay, so for neuropathy, you talked about is the tingling in the arms and legs. If that's something you experience, um, there are there joint pain, is it something you could bring in like magnesium and doing, magnesium oil, which will help the joints and relax. It's a relaxing mineral. Will that be supportive? Um, is it getting, some type of body therapy, right? Or massage or some type of support there. For GERD, right? Things like um, reflux or IBS or things like that that might be disrupting the sleep, right? You could look deeper, and a lot of those come from root from the gut issues. So being
Yeah.
aware if gut issues are a thing for you, if you need to address that, and that's something that we do with our clients as well. So it's important that you assess the health of your gut.
Mm-hmm. And depending on what it is, right? Like you said, there's little things that you could do for each of these things, like for GERD or reflux, struggling with reflux or heartburn. Sometimes just propping up your sleep angle a little bit can really help you be more comfortable throughout the night. So sometimes it's a little tweak, but then also working on the root, right? Like you can help feel more comfortable with the GERD, but then working on the deeper issues to help your body like not experience those symptoms so severely is also always important. the
Yeah.
best the
And
best that you can, right?
yeah, and we realize we're doing a really broad
Yeah, it's
stroke over a lot of
broad.
these things, but the point we wanted to make was that we can, definitely do podcasts on each of these individual topics, but most importantly, we wanted to give you just the awareness around a lot of these so that you can start to see what is maybe at the root for you, realize that there is a connection there to your sleep, and hopefully giving you some good tips to move forward, even if it's just seeking additional help from your doctor or maybe a naturopathic or integrative doctor. Okay, and last but not least, we want to talk about blood sugar fluctuations and food in general, and how food and diet or nutrition or lack thereof in certain areas might be affecting your sleep. So, Danielle, we'd love your wisdom on this.
Yeah, and this is another good topic.
Big
We actually have
topic.
a whole podcast on blood sugar, but so if you need tips on how to maybe level out or correct blood sugar imbalances, check out episode number 9. We'll link it in the show notes as well. But it's one of those things when you are struggling with blood sugar imbalances, it can actually wake you up in the night. Or blood sugar imbalances can lead to something that feels like that cortisol surge, where you're waking up in the night with like a racing heart or kind of anxiety. You might not always feel hungry. So it kind of comes in weird ways, but imbalanced blood sugar can cause you to wake up in the night. So this is something that we're seeing more and more frequently as more and more people are adapting things like intermittent fasting into their routine, even though they might have some hormonal issues going on. So when it comes to doing things like fasting, you just really have to gauge where you're at with your hormones, what's going on with your blood sugar. If fasting starting a fast too early in the night like isn't helpful for you, if you find yourself waking up a couple times in the night feeling hungry, if you feel hungry, that's a good sign that maybe it's a blood sugar, could be a blood sugar thing. But if you're just waking up a lot in the night and you've just started fasting, it's just you kind of have to use your intuition as to whether or not this is working for you. So sometimes just having a snack before bed, and you always hear like don't eat at night, don't eat at night. And for some of us, nighttime eating is a big problem, right? So we're eating, like we're watching Netflix, we're eating all this like stuff after dinner that might not be supportive of a good sleep. Like if we're eating junk and drinking a bunch of wine, or having beers or something like that, that will probably interfere with our sleep. Whereas a little snack before bed, it could be something like cheese and crackers, it could be like a little piece of fruit with nut butter. It doesn't have to be a big snack, but sometimes just having a little balanced snack that has some whole grain carbs or some veggie carbs, fruit carbs, with some fat and protein will just give you that little stabilization with your blood sugar levels, and just help promote a better night's sleep through the night, just from a hormonal perspective. So it's something that you can actually play around with. So for some people, it might not make any difference, but if you do struggle with blood sugar imbalance, you might find that it makes a really big difference. And we already chatted about too the power of food, like removing some of the sensitivities. I shared my story about cutting out gluten and sleeping so much better. So it's just kind of exploring what you're eating. Do you feel like you have sensitivities and a lot of anxiety? If so, then trying a little bit of like more paleo style or doing something like Whole 30, which I would say is kind of a gentle ease into elimination style diet, can give you some really good awareness as to which foods are or aren't working for you and just can be really telling. So, something fun to play with if you've had sleep issues for a while and you've never explored this stuff.
Okay, awesome, Danielle. Thank you for breaking that down. One other thing I wanted to piggyback on that about food and really understanding your own, I would say, like food or eating cycle throughout the day is for some of us, if we're eating dinner too late in the day, I find that if I'm super full closer to bedtime, that can affect um, you just me being able to fall asleep and fall asleep easily. So um, just something to think about, an awareness to have. Is it important? Maybe you want to move up a little bit your dinner time.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up too, because sometimes that nighttime eating or eating really big portions too close to bedtime, that's something that's killer for me. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that you brought that up too, because it can do, I mean, it can just totally wreak havoc on your sleep, especially if you do that all the time, right? So all of this energy that would have gone to repairing and rejuvenating while you're sleeping is now being shunted to digesting during those
Oh,
important sleep
yes.
hours, right? So if you can just digest your biggest, like your bigger part of the meal in the evening before bed and kind of get that out of your system, like a little snack is going to be fine before bed if you need
Yeah.
one, but you just don't want to have something like really heavy and then put that on burden of like energy use on your body right before bed.
I love that. Okay, so I like to eat more like 5, and then I have a snack closer to bedtime. It just
Yeah.
gets me through the night, but also in it feels a little bit lighter. And I'll usually do a piece of fruit with the nut butter. That's my favorite. And so thank you for that suggestion and sharing that. Awesome. Well, I hope this was helpful.
A bit
We
of a
covered a
doozy.
lot. We covered a lot. And yeah, there's a lot of different reasons, as you can tell, that could be causing you to wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. We hope this is helpful for you, gave you some awarenesses, and thank you so much for having this conversation with me, Danielle.
Yeah, thank you, Angela. And I hope everyone that you've gained some new insights from these ideas. Of course, they're not all encompassing, but just a reminder that if you do need support with this is what we help people with every day. Figuring out the hormonal imbalances, looking into your situation, figuring out what the big stressors are for you so that you can spend the little energy that you have focusing on the right parts of your recovery that are most important to your unique situation. So if you're interested in learning more about that, click the link in the show notes. You can schedule a free call with one of our coaches. We'd love to chat with you. If you just need more guidance, if you've been struggling with this stuff for a while, we're here to support you, and that's what we love doing. So Angela, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today and having this
Yes,
great conversation.
you're welcome. And to all of you out there, you don't have to do this alone. We hope this was helpful. And if you want more support and guidance, we're also here for you. That's what our team does every day. So, yes, thank you all and have a beautiful, beautiful day.